Did you know that in 2020, 91,799 people plus more died from a drug overdose in the United States? And my daughter Heidi was one of that number. Now that could be considered a delicate situation of a loss, and some people, there's a stigma to that type of a death, of overdose death, just as there's stigma to things like suicide and other types where people don't want to even talk about it, or maybe don't even validate your grief because of that, even though that's completely wrong. So I'm here today to talk about what some people call disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief. And, that's grief that maybe is taboo to some people, although it really shouldn't be, but it's taboo. There's a stigma attached to it. And my daughter's death could be part of it. I don't see that near as much as it used to be with overdose deaths. There's less stigma than there used to be, but there still is some of that. And then our living loss of our grandchildren being adopted out. Some people, I'm sure, probably wonder what in the world made you not be able to get your grandkids. So that is probably disenfranchised grief. And I didn't know that term, so I'm learning something, and I'm here to share it today. Thank you for joining me today on this video. And this is the shirt that I just wore to speak in my high school that is local, where my kids went and graduated from, Gulf High School in Newport Richey. And I just shared today with a program called the Tools Program, a whole hour presentation with my daughter's story and the statistics and the exact dangers of fentanyl, that it's being put in everything out there now, including vapes, including marijuana, including prescription pills. But really, it's only being put in the fake prescription pills, not the real ones. So, just a real quick word about what I say there. Don't ever accept a pill unless a doctor has prescribed it to you from a pharmacist, because even if you get it from somebody trusted, they might not know better that fentanyl is being put in 8 out of 10 fake prescription pills now. So the only way to ensure that you won't get fentanyl in your pills is to get it from a pharmacist, from your doctor. And you shouldn't be doing that unless you literally have a depression or anxiety issue and they deem you as needing it. That is the facts. Okay, but I'm going to talk about disenfranchised grief. I didn't like that term. I thought, what in the world? Disenfranchised, I will give the definition to, but bottom line, and I'm going to mention different examples. You can share that too if you think of another example. Different things that could have a stigma attached, that where people just kind of hush about it, or don't even, some to the drastic measure, don't even think that you should get to grieve over it, or allow public grief over that issue. Suicide is a big one. Again, that's shifted to more now, but people still have a hard time. I admit it, I have a hard time. How do I deal with that, right? You deal with it just like any other death. The person's gone, because every person dies different ways. And that is something we all have to process, the how the person died, the how and the whole story around it. It's all important. But bottom line, the person's gone and they're never going to come back, and we can't change that. And if that's a life-changing loss for that person, if that's a significant other, then we just need to support them. We don't need to worry about how it happened. It happened. It's done. They need help with the specifics on how to process that, but we, as helping others, we don't need to be judging them. The Bible says, do not judge, lest you be judged. That's one verse, and that whole passage is important. It also says to do to others what you would have them to do to you. And that includes, would we want somebody, if you've already gone through a serious loss, a life-changing loss, then you get it. Anybody who says anything a least bit insensitive, or they just think they're helping you, you know what's helpful and you know what's not helpful. But if you're on the other end of it and you never had that experience, you don't know how to help that person, but you just support them and you just listen. Err on the side of keeping our mouths shut, if anything, if we don't know what to say. Because if you're just listening to them and saying, I'm so sorry, and showing empathy and being there for them, that is huge, and that's what they need. They don't need any hint of judgment or stigma or, comparing. them to somebody else. Like I've talked about in other videos, comparison is not good. Avoid comparison. And they don't need any of that, or somebody telling them to get over it or trying to fix it, because we can't fix it. People who are professionals who understand, I'm a life coach, and I know how to help people in an empathetic and compassionate way. And that's what we need, and that's what people need, is that compassion. So a general definition of disenfranchised is to deprive someone of their rights or privilege of anything. So this is being used as a word to say that people, their grief is real, but because of others' values or beliefs or that kind of thing, they're being deprived, maybe by their family or their church or who knows, of the right or privilege to grieve, because it was a suicide, because that's taboo, or what have you. So that's the general definition of disenfranchised, and why it has been coupled with grief. I needed to know that too, so I'm here to teach what I just learned, right? Okay, here's a general AI overview definition of disenfranchised grief. It occurs when a person experiences a loss that is not openly acknowledged, socially mourned, or publicly supported, often leading to feelings of isolation and difficulty processing the grief. Now that's not good. As I've said many times, we got to get the grief out, or it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to end up making us unhealthy in every part of our being, body, soul, and spirit. And so it's not good when anything is hindering us from expressing our grief and getting the help and the support we need, okay? And it's real losses. So a lot of this is just the ideas of things that people don't always think of as a loss could fall under this category. So it could be multiple different types or kinds of losses that could fall under this, where people could be experiencing disenfranchised grief, But it's kind of like saying grief that's taboo, grief that's you're not getting full support over. So it depends on whether your community and your family systems are accepting of your loss or not. Your family, community, or whoever you're around that matters to you, whether they accept your loss or not. That's kind of the bottom line of it. And so some other examples are someone who's lost custody of their children. Like we basically couldn't get custody of our grandkids. So I think that's part of why not many people ask about it or bring it up to me. So this is, again, I'm learning from this. Another thing could be someone having an abortion. People don't think that that's valid, that they're grieving, but that is very real. I know that's a very real thing. Loss of a pet. That sounds more minor, but a lot of people don't understand that a pet is a huge blessing, support, maybe your only, maybe your pet's your best friend. That is true of some people. So a pet can be a very valid, and it needs to be a valid. If that person says that I can't, I'm so sad and I'm such a mess because my cat died, my dog died, my whatever died, don't ever minimize that. And that's what happens. People either at least minimize. So if your loss is being minimized or you've done it to others, just even that minimization can be part of this type of loss and grief. Or either it's minimized or it's excluded or dismissed or ignored. So if the loss is minimized or ignored or dismissed, even if it's quietly, that is not good. And you can even more get confused by that rather than somebody overtly. Sometimes I'd rather the overt, because then I know exactly what's going on. Like, I don't agree that you even should be sad about that because that person, committed suicide or whatever it is, right? So that's what we're talking about here. It can be incarceration, right? Jail. And you miss that person. You can't be with that person anymore because they're in jail. And that's definitely something a lot of times that's minimized or dismissed. Let's see, any other examples? If you think of any, let me know. Okay, here's a little more minor ones, but they're still valid. Sometimes we are grieving. People just grieve because you can't always figure out when you're going to have a life-changing loss or what's going to rock your world or going to really affect you. Maybe it's somebody that you don't know that well, and it's really rocking your boat. It's really causing you to have a lot of negative emotions. That could be maybe disenfranchised, like other people would say, you didn't even know that person that well. Another one is loss of a celebrity. So loss of celebrity, did you know them? Probably not. Did they know you? No. But, you loved their shows. Maybe they even helped you with your mentality or something about that celebrity. Maybe it even helped you. Or you just totally enjoyed it and you just couldn't believe when they died, and it did majorly affect you. That might come under disenfranchised grief. Okay? Because other people will be like, why are you so upset about that? And they may not give you any support because they can't understand it. So those are some examples that I wanted to give. And then in this book that I just got from the library that is called Moving On Does Not Mean Letting Go. And I like that. I definitely want to read this book, and I started it. It's really good. Kind of seems like she's coming alongside of that, the circle of control that I, is a foundation of my help and how I help others. So moving on doesn't mean letting go, which is definitely true. In that book, the author, who I do not have their name down, I'm sorry, but that's the name of the book. She says on page 39, no one should ever have power over how we grieve or what is worthy of being grieved. And that is totally true. We're all unique. All of our losses are unique. I say this many times. There should be no comparing, and no one should have power over you or me or anyone else and how we grieve and whether we grieve and whether the loss is worthy of being grieved. It's subjective. We don't know it until it happens. Sometimes even a probable, like, life-shaking loss isn't maybe as shattering to that person as other people would think. Well, why are you not more upset about your spouse or your mom or your dad or whoever? Especially, I'm going to mention this another time. This could be another time possibly for disenfranchised grief, is the anticipation of somebody dying because of cancer or what have you. You've had all that time that if you've chosen to work on your grief and grieve before they died, you may not have to do that much after they die. And people could be like, what in the world? How are they over their spouse so fast? When actually, a lot of times this is a person who's very nurturing. And my aunt, I think about that. It seems like that. She's getting remarried pretty quick. And it could look like, what in the world? But I know she's nursed her husband for years. And she's been there for him and she's loved him. And there was no question about that. And then when he died, I'm sure she grieved. But maybe it wasn't as long as others would think because of all of the preparation, the grief before he died. So that could be misunderstood as well. So we want to break that down and just not judge people, not assume you know better than them, not assume that they're crazy or too much with their grief, and come with compassion and empathy and be supportive and be quiet if you don't know what to say. Offer help. Just listen. If you even have that judgment at all, but you still care about that person, err on the side of not saying too much. That's coming out of my mouth with this one. I didn't plan on it, but it's a good rule of thumb, right? To know that you're not them and you're not in their shoes, so you cannot relate. That's the bottom line. Even if we have similar losses, we can get into comparing, well, why is she so upset? Or why is she not going through as much as I'm going through? Don't compare. There's no comparison in grief. So that's what I want to share today. And, my daughter's death of overdose and drug people were addicted. Sometimes they could be treated, they did used to be treated less because they died of an addiction and they were treated less of a person. It's not right to do that. I'm telling myself that. I think I used to think that way. It's not right. It's a loss. It's a person. It's a human being that's fearfully and wonderfully made by God. And we're all fearfully and wonderfully made. And we all have different issues. We all have different things that we get hung up on. Again, the Bible says, do not judge, lest you be judged. So that's what I want to share today. Julie Kay, helping you find your way through grief and loss. Bye-bye for next time. Please share this out.